Hello and welcome. Sorry I look a little disheveled, but things happen, unfortunately. Now, this episode and the next one, these two episodes will be space themed. And today we take on an Apollo mission that never happened. Because we tried to go to the moon in Apollo 18 mission to the moon. RetroKork. In Apollo 18, which is an unused number for the Apollo missions, though de facto Apollo 17 is what Apollo 18 was supposed to be, since the original Apollo 15 got cancelled due to costs. In Apollo 18, you're headed for a full-on lunar mission. The game itself is a collection of scenes you could have encountered in such a mission to the moon. You play the game with your joystick and port 2 as well as the keyboard, and you start, like all good NASA Voyagers back then, at Kennedy Space Center. For the first scene, you see everything from the perspective of a controller in mission control, where with the help of the telemetry screen, which you open by pressing T on the keyboard, you set up everything for a successful launch. When you're ready to launch, press fire and prepare yourself for a balancing act. In the window with the caption "Error" underneath, you'll see a red bar. Press fire when it expands halfway into the left half of the display. Now, the launch is made up of several steps, which themselves are grouped into different groups of 4, with 12 steps, 3 groups. When the second group starts with the 5th step, you'll be able to control the spaceship. With the joystick, you can manipulate the balance between the thrusters of the rocket. You need to keep them balanced. And you have to stay on your launch path, represented by the red bar in the window of the 2 yellow ones. So it has to stay rather close to the middle. If everything works out fine, you're now in an Earth orbit. Follow the procedures directed by Mission Control, especially the insertion burn program. Then it's pretty much time to pull the lunar module, the lander, out of its hold. You do the pull-out maneuver by docking the nose of your command module to the top of the lander, doing course corrections with a joystick. Approach with a minimal speed, though don't take too long, as your speed in docking will be determining the score for this part of the mission. Now, if the computer has to abort this segment 3 times, either because you're too fast or too off from the docking clamp, it will do an automatic docking procedure and the remaining mission will be altered accordingly. Now you're on your way to the moon and everything's fine, but during your trip you'll have to do course corrections. Now, this means your board computer will count down to the moment your RCS is supposed to fire. Press fire on your joystick and keep it pressed when this changeover happens, until the noise-filled screen turns red. If you have avoided being off more than 300 time units, you won't have oversteered, which would mean you'd have to repeat the course correction. How much you were off from the acceptable timing is displayed in the overflow window. Now, if everything's gone right so far, you're now ready to land on the moon. This means you have to play the strangest version of Lunar Lander ever, where you try staying within the landing window, the landing corridor. Here your final velocity on landing should stay under 50 to avoid any damage. Though until 100 it will not really fail completely. Oh, and you only have 3 attempts at landing, otherwise you'll never see the moon up close and personal, since then you'll have to return to the command module. After your landing, it's time to walk on the moon. which you obviously do by following a path on the overhead map with up and down. What, you thought you'd do that in first person? Now, the best way to move around on the lunar surface is the bunny hop, where you lean forwards and backwards, but of course not too far or you'll fall. Your goal is to walk towards Surveyor 3, pretty much like the astronauts of Apollo 12 did, and gather some data, then turn back and return to the lunar module. Well, actually, you don't do anything but turn back immediately. You probably didn't pack enough oxygen or anything to do anything in particular, because oxygen is here a critical limiting factor. After all this, you head back up to meet with the one member of the mission who didn't get to be on the moon. Yes, you're going to dock with the command module, the capsule again. And on your way back, you're going to pick up 3 satellites during a spacewalk. Here the cursor keys work as the third axis in the 3-dimensional space. If you look at the bottom left, you'll see 3 dots. If they get close enough and turn green, you're in range to use the hook, which you take out by pressing the spacebar and capture the satellite. Bring it back on board and do the same 2 more times. Now after that, there's going to be more course correction, but we already talked about that. So let's get to the final stage. Re-entry and landing on Earth. You start this by going into telemetry and starting the re-entry sequence, obviously. Your angle is supposed to stay between 5.5 and 7.3 degrees. You achieve that with a ball gyro, which you have to keep centered by joystick movements. Don't let the temperature reach 5,000 Fahrenheit or more, because then the crew is toasted. After that you fire off programs 99 and 90, which trigger basically the atmospheric landing, and you should be fine. And that's the game. It's a collection of really difficult minigames strung together by the plot. The reaction-based levels are tough, especially speaking for emulators, where reaction times are a bit off compared to a real Commodore 64. The game uses speech samples, and this works wonderfully because, let's face it, the compression and the low quality, therefore, work in favor for this theme. Music is nowhere to be found, but I mean, in space no one can hear you scream if your radio is turned off, so there's no need for music. Anyway, that's all I've got about this Apollo mission themed game. Next time we'll head back into space, as episode 99 of RetroKork is about the game Space Shuttle, A Journey into Space. Yes, I'm closing in on the big 100.